Have you seen Appa? My sky bison? Sky bison. Sky bison.
Repeating it doesn't help.
I have seen it and I've got thoughts. Hey, this is the Sword and the Pen Reflections. It is my casual alternative to a channel up there that doesn't matter right now because I have seen episode 1 of the live action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender. For those of you who don't know, I was invited to the cast premiere that happened on, oh my gosh, I can't even remember the date that it happened on anymore, the 15th, over in LA. So I do have lots of praise, but I also have critique. And I have answers to the questions that I had about why certain choices that I didn't think were totally stellar were made. And they're actually pretty good reasons. So I'm going to discuss that, and you can come along this journey with me as I go over my initial thoughts of this first episode. First thing, I know I said it in my last video, but that was kind of a crappy video. I was tired in my hotel or whatever, but there has been some, not accusations, but suspicions online that I'm like being paid by Netflix. So I'm setting the record straight here. I am not paid by Netflix in any way. I have no, contract verbally or anything. My getting invited to this event wasn't even really an invite, sort of. Like, let me just explain how it happened. So I put out that video on Faithful Adaptations, and some rando person contacted me and said, hey, I'm an executive at Netflix and I just wanted you to know that you nailed it on like so many points. This is like exactly what we're trying to do with Avatar. And I was like, okay. And I did some, stalking on YouTube and IMDb and whatever, and I found out this is a legit person. So we've been chatting about storytelling and about Avatar, and I just started getting a lot more confident that these people actually do want to do a faithful adaptation, and they know how to tell a story. So we've been chatting for a while, and then when I saw on X, so people were wondering, how did I go to this premiere? They publicly announced on Twitter, or X.com, that if you're a fan and you want to go to one of these events, you can apply for a ticket. And I thought, might be kind of fun to meet my contact in Netflix, and I'd love to go and see the show. So I applied, and then I mentioned it to who I think I can now call my friend in Netflix. Hey, I've applied for this, and if I get it, maybe we could meet up and hang out or something. And they were like, oh, I'll just make sure you get a ticket. And I'm like, thanks. I mean, I wasn't going to say no. I wasn't fishing for it, but I was very grateful to get one. So I went, and it was fantastic. Such a great experience. And I am going to put out a video on the cast party that happened or not the cast party, the premiere, but also the after party, because I did get invited to the after party with the cast, where I was literally bumping shoulders with the people who made the movie. I've met everybody. I met the whole cast. I met all, I'm sure that there are a lot more executives and stuff there that I didn't really get to talk to, but I met a ton of people. Shout out to the costume department. You guys were awesome and made me feel so welcome the whole time. And I was asked many, many times at this event by high up people in production they were telling me, please do not water down your reviews. Be honest with your critiques. If we do something wrong, tell us. They want to hear this stuff, which was shocking to me to hear that so many times. The actor who played Uncle Iroh took me aside for 10 minutes to make sure I really understood how important it was that I not be a shill. So that to me just means, first of all, so much. I love all of you guys. And it is hard to critique people who, I'm not critiquing you guys. I'm critiquing the art, right? I guess. And it is tough to do that, but I am not going to hold back if I see something really badly wrong. So wish granted, here it goes. So I've said it in my videos before that there are 5 areas of storytelling that I feel like you need to really focus on to make sure that you are creating a faithful adaptation. And that's world building, character arcs, plot points, themes, and tones. And I am happy to say that they have nailed it on all of these things. So for world building, you really felt like this is a populated world. The special effects for the bending and for just the backdrops and everything, it all looked really good. I know that there were some complaints about some of the Aang going into the Avatar state stuff, but I found out after my meeting with my friend that those were unfinished visual effects that we all saw at the premiere. So it's going to look a lot better when we get it on Netflix, when it's streaming to everybody at home. I had only one world building complaint, and it was when somebody bends one of the elements, I felt that they were too far away from that particular element. And I could throw in that it was like a desperate moment and that maybe that desperation allowed for a little, super bending sort of stuff to happen. But that was, I think it's just a small thing. It probably could have been fixed with maybe a different source for this particular element. I'm not going to spoil anything. Oh yeah, this is a spoiler-free review because we have all been asked, those of us who went to the premiere, which only showed one episode, by the way, to please not give any spoilers. So I'm not going to do that. And yeah, that's enough. But yeah, it looked really good. We didn't see a whole lot of different types of bending. We saw earth bending and we saw mostly fire bending and air bending, but we did see a little bit of earth bending and we did see a little bit of water bending. And I can't wait to see more of this, which I know we're going to get in the second episode because it's in the second episode or the third? The third episode, which is about Omashu, the king of Omashu. So we're going to see earthbending there. And I really want to see that big difference in the different styles of the martial arts, because that to me was always such a beautiful touch in the animation that you could tell that is an earthbender. Even if you didn't see them doing moving, rocks and things, you could tell by how they moved that it was a grounded, direct style. And then waterbending was smooth and flowing. You get the idea. But because we saw mostly firebending and earthbending, it was a little tougher to see that there was a significant difference between the two. Let's see. But it looked great. Okay, we're going to jump to plot points here. The first episode, and I don't think this is a spoiler, pretty much covers everything from all the way back at the Avatar or the Airbender Southern Air Temple genocide, a little bit before that, all the way to the end of what would have been in the animation, the third episode. I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying that. That's all covered. There are things that have been rearranged. And for me, when you do rearrangement like this, I ask myself, why was that done? And I do that calculating in my head sometimes as I'm watching, or I go back and I think about it. And I ask myself, did this enhance anything? What would be the purpose of moving some of these things? And I have to say that after thinking about it, and we're not doing spoilers now, we'll do it when, the first episode comes out. Every time that I was asking myself, did this enhance something important that had to happen in this episode? My answer was yes. So I agree with all of the rearrangement that was done in this episode. I thought it was a good choice. I think it's also one of those things that helps your audience who has never seen the show before get really invested right away. Now, remember in the animated series, especially those first few episodes are very playful, with the exception of, episode 1 and 2 where, we establish who the good guy is and the bad guy is. But they're pretty episodic after those first two until we get to the storm. And so I really felt like I didn't get invested in the story until the storm. So we did see some things, obviously, the genocide of the temple, that being revealed in the animation happened in the storm episode. So having it in this first episode here, it's like you're offering that thing that, to me, invested me in the animation. You're offering it now in the live action in the first episode, which is a good choice for storytelling. So, good decision there. But yeah, all the major plot points that people are going to be looking for in that episode, or in those 3 episodes, are present. They're all there. You're good. So that was a big concern for me, was that they were going to leave out something major, something that was essential to especially our 5 main characters. So that would be Aang, Katara, Sokka, and then Zuko and Iroh. He is a main character. He's kind of on the outskirts, but he's there. Did I ever list him as a secondary character? I don't think I did. If I did, that was probably a mistake. You know, he's between tier 1 and tier 2, I would say. Moving on to themes. Themes are so tied to characters and plot that it is tough to talk about them without, you know, getting into it. But there was the one that was so controversial to everybody. Is Sokka sexist? And so I can confirm that it has been toned down. And the way that it was toned down is there just wasn't really a huge opportunity to make it blatant, to put it up on the surface. But they set it up. Remember in episodes 1, 2, and 3 of the animation, there's only one instance where Sokka says anything really sexist. It's when they're out fishing in that very first scene with Katara and Sokka, and he says, you know, something like, leave it to a girl to mess things up or something like that. And that's when she says, you know, you are the most sexist, thick-headed, whatever. You remember that. We all remember that speech. He doesn't make that comment because there's no opportunity to make that comment. But what we do see is that he is very much in this mindset that I'm in charge and you're not. And so kind of like you should be doing what I say because dad left me in charge, not you. And this has the undertones of sexism, and we can kind of see the effect on Katara as well, which I'll get more into in the arcs segment when I talk about the arcs. Please like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just with an emoji. It's a free way to support the channel. Or if you're feeling really generous, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button. You can even leave me a one-time tip. Information is in the description and below. But yeah, all the other themes were there. They have amplified responsibility, which I thought was kind of adorable that the main actor, Gordon, who plays Aang, seems to have a little bit of difficulty in saying responsibility. It's like there's a missing syllable in there. And you know what? It wasn't really noticeable when he was delivering the whole speech where that word came out, but I did think it was kind of cute. But yeah, choosing to follow through with your responsibility, definitely a theme. Also, leadership. The theme is there. And we're also seeing all the themes that come up with Zuko, like maybe going back home and, you know, trying to reacquire the throne is not everything, you know, so we're seeing the seedlings of all of these things coming in. I honestly didn't notice that anything significant was really missing in the themes, and that's a good thing. It just means that it felt whole as it is. Tones were great. Now, they have definitely amplified two things. They amplified the sense of danger and intensity in all of the firebending. If you have a child who you think, oh, we're going to watch the live action with them, maybe watch the first 15-ish minutes on your own beforehand, because it is scary. They make the firebending very, very scary. They do show some of the monks getting like burned up, so it can be a bit intimidating, but I would say it's just a very strong PG-13. So now, anybody who said anything about Game of Thrones and, you know, oh, we're trying to appeal to the Game of Thrones crowd, I've been saying the same thing for years. Like ever since I saw the animation. And well, I mean, it came out before Game of Thrones, but when I saw Game of Thrones and I would consider the animation, like, wouldn't it be great as a live action? I was like, this could be the Game of Thrones for the whole family. And what I meant by that is it could appeal to a wide audience. Now, I have another video over on that channel called Hooks, and I talk about this particular thing, that there was so much about Game of Thrones that appealed to different types of audiences that you ended up appealing to like everybody. I mean, they were debuting episodes at bars like it was, you know, a UFC championship. When was the last time a show ever did that? I genuinely feel like they could do that with Avatar, and I get enthusiastic when I say that, and I tell people like, this could be Game of Thrones, but for the whole family. That, I think, is what they were going for when they said this, because it's a big, epic fantasy with lots of great world building, wonderful character development, and a lot of different tones and things that people can just enjoy and latch onto. So that's what I think was meant. And this first episode was not so, like, the scary stuff was scary, but it was not put in there like, oh, they're trying to like make it really grotesque to appeal to Game of Thrones. No, didn't get that at all. They did this to make firebending terrifying. And they definitely succeeded in doing that. So well done there. I mean, I went out of that moment going like, nobody wants to be around a firebender because they're brutal. And it was just good. It was good. The humor was something that everybody was afraid was going to go away, and that playfulness that we see. It's all there. It's still there. I didn't feel like anything was missing. But because they put the genocide at the beginning, and yeah, Aang learns about it in this first episode, obviously, because we're going to the end of the third episode, you feel that if they were to have Aang being super think about in the animation, the amount of time that was spent on him mourning the loss of his family and, just like finding Monk Gyatso's body was very tiny. And everything else was very fun and playful. There was brief moments of like, now we're back to sad, but it would have felt very awkward in the first episode if we didn't have the impact of how big this was for Aang, that he is alone in the world. So I thought it was really good that they toned down. They didn't tone down his humor, but it was like when he found out what was going on, it devastated him and it hit hard. And they did that very well. We'll get into that. The humor, though, the humor was just right. I really feel that they wanted to make sure that they get this perfect, because that's one of the appeals of Avatar, is it's so funny. And they got it. They had humor with Aang. They had it a lot with Sokka. They even had it with Iroh. So like it was in the characters where it was meant to be. So I'm going to get into it when I get into actor performances and stuff. But Sokka, the actor playing Sokka, really nailed it. Like you can tell they must have been like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we got this kid in here because he is perfect for this role. So he did a really good job. And it wasn't too much. So the humor was used in the way that it is used in the show, but it wasn't thrown awkwardly out there. It felt like it flowed, and it wasn't put in so bad, like not badly, but so much that you felt like, oh, they're overdoing it. It was like just the right amount. Just the right amount of humor. I really feel like they nailed that one. So good job there. Okay, character arcs. So I can't go into the details of what the character arcs were, but I can say that they've established for all 5 of these characters that they have something that they need, something that they want, and something that's in their way. And for the characters that it's appropriate for, we were given a way to feel about them. So if we were supposed to feel sympathy for them, we were given reasons to feel sympathy for them. If we're supposed to be afraid of them, we were given reasons to feel afraid of them. Or unsure even. If we're not meant to feel, we're supposed to not really know what's up with this person. So that was, and it was accurate. Like the ones that they did this for, they set it up just right. Now, some of them are a little bit different. Like they have tweaked the motivations for some of these characters. And again, I did that thing where I asked myself, okay, what was it in the animation and what was it for the live action? And was it in the live action a tweak that enhanced it in some way, that made their motivation more intense, more personal, more believable? Like, did it help with the logic of the storytelling? And every single time, my answer was yes. There was only one character, and I'm not going to say who it was, but there's only one character who the motivation for them to do something was changed. And I thought, okay, it doesn't seem quite as like it's going to affect this character later, but it made more sense in the storytelling. So when you watch it, I think you'll probably be able to figure out who I'm talking about. But it was, again, one of those things where I felt like they improved something or they fixed something that wasn't quite right in the animation. And I'm in love with the animation. I tell all of my clients, you must watch this show and study it for, and I'll give them like a specific thing to look at. And I usually give them it can be anything pretty much, because the storytelling is so good, but it's not perfect. There are moments that don't quite make sense. There are moments that could have been a little better. The pacing isn't always perfect. So it's got room for improvement. And every time I was seeing something that they made a change to, I figured out, okay, I can see how this decision was made in order to fix something or improve something or make something more intense. You get the idea. So the decisions being made are, as far as storytelling goes, they're good. Okay, the actors. Now, this is where the show is really glowing. I mean, they nailed it with these kids. Okay, so when I went into this, I was going, okay, I sat down in the theater and I thought to myself, if the actors are not good, when I do my review, I'm going to be honest and I'm going to say they weren't great. But I'm going to also make a call out to other YouTuber reviewers that we don't criticize the kids too hard. Because first of all, they're just kids and they have a lot of attention on them right now. There's some really horrible stories of things that happened to child actors who didn't perform an iconic role well, and they don't need that. And also think about this. If, like, remember Harry Potter, the first movie? The kids were not the greatest actors in that first movie. There are some cringe line deliveries in that. But by the time we got to the final film, I mean, even by the time we got to the second and third film, like, there's just so much improvement in each one. So that was what I was going to say. And I was prepared to have to do that. But I don't have to do that because these kids were freaking awesome. I can't tell you how many times I was genuinely moved by Aang's performance, by Gordon, whatever. I'm not very good with names. He was so good. He really drew us in. He was fun and playful, and when it had to be dramatic, he drew us in. So wonderful job on the part of Gordon. Like, he's the perfect person to lead this cast. No questions there. You're gonna be impressed. Sokka, I think, stole the show. And I told him so at the cast party or the after party or whatever. I was like, I think you really nailed it. Like, I love Sokka. He's definitely my favorite character right out. Well, I didn't say that it was after Iroh and Zuko, but I mean, gosh, it's a pretty close third. Like, they're a trio. And I was like, I trust you to do it right. Because I saw, even in just this first episode, we got a lot of range with his character, and I loved it. He nailed it. So very good performance on his part, and he's got the sarcasm just right. It's not too over the top. It's not too subtle. It's just right. So I was like, thank God. Like, thank goodness we've got somebody who can do Sokka right, because a lot of the humor is going to fall in his hands, and he's going to be responsible for bringing a little bit of levity into certain situations, and he does it. Zuko actor, great. And for him, I was concerned we weren't going to see the ferocity and the rage that we're supposed to see in Zuko, but he's got it. He's definitely got it. I felt like they could have maybe turned up the volume on some of his. It's like a release of energy when you shout and you're doing a move. Which, remember, anytime that we saw Zuko in the animation, throwing a punch and fire coming, he would shout. He would go ha ha like this. He does that, and it sounds so good, but it was a little bit too quiet in some moments. Not that he was quiet, more like the blast sounds of the fire were just overpowering it sometimes, and I wanted to hear him more, but I could still hear it and sounded great. His facial expressions are great. I think we've got a really good actor here, and he dials it up. Like, it becomes more and more intense the further along we get in the episode, until the last few seconds of the episode, which I really, really loved. I missed a point in themes. Okay, so I'm just going to mention it here. So now I thought that they were going to eliminate what we did in the animation, which is have some parallel mirroring, even in the editing, between Aang and Zuko. I thought, okay, if they're moving the stuff from Aang in the storm to the first episode, well, that means we're not going to have that parallel mirroring. But they saved it. They put it in, and it was beautiful. It was a monologue right at the end of the episode. It is the closing monologue, and they cut back and forth between Zuko and Aang, and it was so intense and so perfect, and it demonstrated that their plots are parallel to each other, and I loved it. And I'm so glad that they did it, because I felt that was so important to the two of them. The whole story is about the two of them eventually coming together, So, okay, good job there. I backtracked to themes. I was talking about, was it character arcs? No, it was the actors. Okay. Uncle Iroh, great. He's got a higher pitched voice than Uncle Iroh. So you do have to kind of get used to that. But he was acting just like Uncle Iroh in episodes 1, 2, and 3. Like there was nothing about him that was not just like Uncle Iroh. Actually, it was more like episode just 1 and 2 for Iroh and Zuko, because there was stuff in episode 3 that happened with them, but we don't get that in this first episode. But the stuff that I did see of him, which, like I said, wasn't a whole lot, felt like Iroh so far. So, good job there. I know that actor is going to pull off the humor that we need from Uncle Iroh, and also the love. He's a very talented actor, so we're good there. And the final actor I want to talk about is Katara. Okay, I'm not sure. I don't know how to say her name. I talked to her dad at the after party. He was so nice, and he was so proud of her. Kia something. I'm going to call her Katara. Okay, so her performance, to me, spoke volumes in how how subtle it was. So you feel like there is something underneath her ready to come up. Like there's something that she's holding back. And her facial expressions really did a good job of expressing just that. Like the hopefulness is all there. Her character is all the same, so we're not really talking about characters. They're all the same characters. She's one of those actresses who is going to nail the really soft moments. And we had some of those with Aang. We had some with, actually they were mostly with Aang, but then we had some where she was by herself, and they were very subtle, but I liked it. And we didn't get to see a whole lot of range. We'll see what happens in the future, but I was pleased with what I saw. So I will say that her character, she didn't do some of the things in this first episode that we saw her do in the first 3 episodes of the animation, but I didn't mind it. And this is where I felt like I saw some of those undertones of sexism. So she has, the Southern Water Tribe is not as sexist as the Northern Water Tribe, and that was evident, but like I said, we saw that Sokka was kind of bossing around Katara, and she was sort of expected to just go with it. She did argue with him, like she spoke up for herself, but she was a bit softer. And I don't mind this because Katara is very compassionate as well. And I would like to see her sort of blossom over the next few episodes. And I think that's what we're going to get. I feel like that's what we're setting up with her character, that she's starting out more reserved. And, remember when I think we're going to get it in the Jet episode. Like how intense would it be if she is more of this reserved sort of character, but then when we get to the Jet thing and she's been betrayed, that's when the anger comes out and we see her finally like breaking through this barrier. Am I giving spoilers away by saying all this stuff? I don't think I am. Anyway, okay, I really, really badly want to talk about what they're setting up with these characters in their plots in the first episode, because this is the sort of thing I love to do when I'm watching, or reading or anything. So this is maybe why I'm a developmental editor, because I like to see if I can predict where things are going to go. And I like what they're setting up here because I see the potential of where it's going to go. And I don't want anybody to, go like, oh, it sounds like they've changed a lot. They haven't. They've really stuck to these characters. These characters are good. The one who has the most changes is Aang, but he's not an alien Aang. He is still Aang. He's just got a little bit more of awareness of the gravitas of the situation. Gravity. Sorry, that was the wrong word. You get what I mean. He's just more aware of that. The playfulness and everything is still there. Moving on. So I'm aware of a critique of some of the performances of the the other actors, like the ones that are only there for a couple of lines or whatever and move on. And there was only one that I did agree with, and I'm going to agree gently out of politeness because I sat just a few chairs away from this lady and she seemed very sweet and very enthusiastic about being in the film, and everybody loved her. I mean, so it is Gran, and her delivery of the lines that she made were a little bit narrow in vocal range. And I actually am accustomed to this sort of thing because I live near several reservations. I'm in Arizona, and I mean, I've lived in a couple different cities in Arizona. And with some of the tribes, there is this narrow range of vocalization where your tones don't go too high or too low. They kind of stay in here. And you can be very expressive within this, but it's very subtle. And I just kind of chalked up her delivery to being like that. And it was something that if you're accustomed to it, it feels normal. But I think to a lot of audiences, it's going to feel flat. Like it's going to feel like poor acting. And it's not super strong. Like when you are performing, you do want to kind of go up and down like this, but it worked for me because it felt like authentic. I don't know if it's accurate to Inuit tonality when speaking, but it felt indigenous to me. So I don't know, if you're indigenous, you tell me, like, are you Inuit? Did it sound like, does grandma talk like this? But I'm not going to harp on her performance because it's a small role and she does her job. And it would have been a challenging thing to deliver anyway. So I had no problem with it. Not a big problem anyway. And everybody else, when I thought about their delivery, I had to ask myself, now, is it the delivery that feels awkward, or is it the lines itself? And that brings me to my big critiques. So before I get to my big critiques, I want to tell a little story about seeing this, becoming aware of this critique, and how I expressed this critique to some people the first time. So I came out of this feeling like this was very fast-paced. A lot of stuff happened in this first episode. And there was a ton of exposition over it. Now, the exposition is much better than what we got in like the Shyamalan movie, where it felt like two people would be giving exposition in the same room, but it didn't sound like they were in the same room. It didn't even sound like they heard each other speaking. It was just so chopped up. I don't diss M. Night Shyamalan. I think he was in over his head. But it didn't feel like that. It flowed naturally, but it was exposition. Now, this kind of dialogue does feel better upon like rewatches and stuff. But hearing it the first time as a writer, I go, did you need to say that? Couldn't we have just figured that out? Couldn't it have been inferred with, something that didn't have to be said? And I felt that a few times. And so you had a lot of exposition happening over the sequence of events that took place. So lots of talking over the events that were happening. And I think that it might actually be the fact that there was exposition happening over these scenes that made it feel like it was moving a little bit too quickly. I would have to watch it again to really get a sense of that, but I think that's what it is. But it does feel like fast-paced like that. And there's a ton of exposition. And here's the part that this is my biggest critique. There was a lot of repetition in that exposition. Now, exposition, you don't usually want to do. And repetition of exposition, you kind of go, please don't ever do that. Like I would say there was a couple instances of repetition that I would want to examine. Like if I could have a copy of the script, I would go through it and I would highlight all the times when I felt like something was repeated. Oh, I got hair in my lips and it's driving me nuts. Hang on. Sorry, I just had hair like stuck to my lipstick and it was tickling me. I would have gone through and I would have highlighted in different colors every time information was repeated, and I would have seen how many instances can we remove that repetition. Like I would be wary about saying something more than once, but definitely not more than twice. I think if you say it more than twice, it feels obnoxious to somebody who's like, I get it, you don't have to say it again. So I do think if I would want to go through the script and do that. Just one more time. I feel like there could have been maybe one more pass just to double check that it wasn't 3 times. There was 2 and no more. But okay, so that was what I observed. And I came out of it going, I loved everything with the exception of those 3 things. And I had decided in my head, when I go to this after party and I talk to executives and writers and things like that and actors, if they ask me, what did you like about, what did you think? I was going to tell them what I loved, but I wasn't going to leave out my critique. I want to be fair. And I'll tell you what, it's not easy to like give any kind of critique of the art made by people who you have met now. And like, they were all so kind, but I am always going to be honest with my critiques. And here's one of the big reasons why. So I went to the after party, and this scenario happened about 4 times. The first time, though, it happened was with Albert Kim. So I was on the stairwell with Albert Kim. We were just, it's weird. You kind of hang out on the stairs. And I was like, you're Albert Kim. And he had heard of my videos because apparently a whole bunch of people in this production watch my videos for some reason, which was very flattering. And they weren't just blowing wind at my skirt. People were quoting my videos to me. So, hi. I'm so flattered. It's like weird for me, but awesome. I hope I'm always helpful. So when we were talking and he kind of, got a sense of who I am and stuff, he asked me, he's like, so what is your critique? And I went, how do I say it? And before I could say it, he goes, there was a lot of stuff that happened and it was too much exposition and too much repetition in the exposition. And I just kind of sat there blinking stood there like, well, you've said it, so I don't have to say it now, but that's exactly what I was going to say to you. And he was very self-aware. It was like an artist who knows that, it's not perfect, but I had to show it. And so they're like telling you about the stuff that's wrong about it so that you know that they're aware of it. So I was like, okay, so what happened? Albert Kim said that they really debated whether or not they should show the first episode and the second episode, or just the first episode at the premiere, because they are very much aware that the first episode has these problems. But the second episode, they said, takes off, it moves at a much more natural pace, and this is the pacing of the rest of the show. Like, it's almost as if the first episode is there to kind of like grab everybody that needs to be grabbed, inform them of the things they need to be informed of, and then, okay, now you're on the boat, let's put the boat into the water. And that's where like episode 2 kind of takes off, and it continues this way to the end of the season. I do think that there could have been instances where instead of somebody saying things like, the whole reincarnation cycle or whatever, that maybe we could have had like a moment where Aang was in a temple and he saw paintings of the different avatars or something. And I don't know, but you would still need somebody to kind of say like, these are your past lives kind of thing. They sort of did it, but with only Avatar, was it Yang? Sometimes I get the name wrong. Yang Chen? I can't remember. You know who I mean. The previous air nomad incarnation. But anyway, so that was from Albert Kim. And then, and by the way, Albert Kim, like, he told me, don't water down your critique. Like, it was weird to hear him say that. And he was not the only one. It was all these people who I talked to, including Paul Sun-hyun Lee. Paul Sun-hyun Lee, he's okay, Uncle Iroh, the actor who plays Uncle Iroh. Very sweet guy. Pulled me aside for 10 minutes to tell me, to like make sure I understood that I should not water down my critiques. And by the way, to anybody who I talked to at that party, I'm so sorry if I talked too much. Sometimes I just let my mouth run. If I would hope that you make me stop, because I don't want to be doing what I'm doing. And I sometimes struggle to restrain myself when I'm excited about something. So anyway, that's why my videos turn out so long. Okay. But they all wanted me to make sure that I'm honest with my critiques. And the reasoning was this, is that when somebody gives what is an honest critique, it helps us to make a better show. And I was like, these people listen to what we say. And being on the outside, sometimes you wonder if people in the studios are listening, and maybe they aren't in other places, but these guys are listening. And yes, after talking to Albert Kim and talking to my other friend and some of the other executives, they do care about what we think. They do want to make a faithful adaptation. They do want the fans to feel like this is Avatar if it was in, live action. They want that. And there are changes that have to be made, but they want that. So anyway, that's why I'm going to always be giving an honest critique. Even though it might be hard, I will do my best not to be too fluffy. Anyway, so that was my critique for Albert Kim and for everybody else that I talked to, and they were very self-aware of it. Now, when I went to talk to my friend afterwards and get, elaboration on this, I found out that it was a real struggle for the Netflix executives to hit the right mark so that they were being accessible to audiences who had never seen the animation before. Because think about, this is what happened basically, is they had an episode that fans of Avatar were able to follow fine. But people who had no exposure to it really, really struggled to grasp the mythology. And in the end, they want to draw in a new audience. They want that new audience to not be confused, number one, but also to get invested really quickly. And it was, from my understanding, a very, very difficult choice to put out an episode that they knew fans of the original source material are going to feel like it's exposition heavy and it's repetitive, but that this was necessary because people who have no exposure to this are really struggling to understand it, and this will help them. Like, this is going to get them in there. And Albert Kim said this, and my friend said this. We really hope people won't write off the series because of the first episode. Get yourself to the second episode and you're going to understand what the pacing is going to be like. I do think it's unfortunate that a first episode had to come out like this, but I do see the reasoning behind it, and the logic is sound. I mean, we want new audiences to come in and watch this. My mother does not enjoy anime at all, can't make herself focus or pay attention. I've tried to show her Avatar, and she can't. And I tried to show her One Piece, and she can't. But she sat down and watched the One Piece live action and watched it herself. I think at this point it's about 5 or 6 times. Like, she has watched it on her own several times and loves it. And I'll never get her to sit down and watch the anime because it's just not palatable to her. And that's fine. You don't have to. But she understands the story now. And when people talk about how they love One Piece, even if they're talking about the manga or the anime, because they did a faithful adaptation, she understands. And that's what I would love to get out of this Avatar, the live action. And we do get a little bit of expansion, which is also nice too. But I'd love to be able to share something I love with people who just can't bring themselves to enjoy an animation. And I didn't have interest in the One Piece anime until I watched the live action. And now I'm like, okay, I'm a bit impatient for the next installment of the live action, so I'm gonna go watch the anime and get myself caught up. Isn't this what we want? We want to bring people in. So that's what I'm thinking about this first episode. But like I said, objectively, the first episode has issues with exposition, a lot of exposition, and repetition in that exposition. The only thing I think maybe could have been fixed is some of the repetition in the exposition. I think there would be ways that we could do it visually somehow, or help to make it stick the first time by offering something visual to look at. But I do also think that it's something that's, because it was written in a way that flows well, despite being like, it is exposition, the conversations progressed logically. I don't think it's going to age badly. I don't say age badly. I think that watching it again and again, it's not going to feel worse and worse. It's going to bother us less and less. Those of us who aren't used to this sort of thing, or who look for this sort of thing and say you shouldn't do that, it might stick out to us the first time, but I don't think it'll bug us too badly once we've gotten through the rest of the series. So I have no idea if the rest of the series is going to do what my friends have said that it does, where it gets to episode 2 and improves. And from what I hear, from what I have been told, every episode gets progressively better and better and better, and I do trust my friend. The fact that they were able to tell me these are the problems with it before I could even tell them what I thought the problems were showed me a great deal of self-awareness. So to say that, but then also say, but episode 2 is good and it just gets better and better and better and better, gives me a lot of hope, and that is my message to everybody out there. If you haven't seen it, now I would love to have this test. If you haven't seen the original series, when you watch the first episode of the live action, did any of it feel repetitious to you? Did any of it feel like it stuck out to you as this is like awkward, or was it really interesting information to you that made you go, oh, that's an interesting, because then it's effective. Then what they did actually does the job. And even if it sticks out to those of us who already know what it is, it's still bringing in more people to love Avatar. So I think the trade-off might have been necessary. I do think it could have been done a smidge better, but I think it might also be necessary. And I think a lot of these changes probably had to be made after most of it was already filmed and done. So, but I don't know. I didn't ask that. But yeah, so that is my first impression of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live action. A big thank you to my friend who invited me, got me in, and then invited me to the after party, which was fantastic. And I will be putting that video out very shortly, probably tomorrow, maybe even today, I don't know, to walk you guys through what that was like. Because, oh my gosh, I had some of the most fascinating conversations with these people. And I think it would be interesting for people who've never been to a party like this, like I had never been to one, to know what it's like. And I was very surprised by what these people are like when there's no camera rolling. It wasn't what I expected, and it was really wonderful. But I think I gotta end it there, because I do want to deep dive into everything that I saw in this first episode and talk about the choices that were made and, kind of expound on why they were maybe made, and some of the things that I was told about why they were made. But I can't do that until Thursday. We have been told no spoilers, and I'm not going to break my promise to no spoilers, although I think I gave maybe a few teeny smidgy ones in this. But yes, I'm not going to give this episode a rating. A first episode is always going to be establishing and getting everybody in and understanding what's going on, and then we move on like most first episodes are. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you're feeling super generous, please check out my Patreon or Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button down below. I have not yet made $50 on any of my Avatar videos. Like that's how much I make from YouTube. So I'm not sitting here begging for money, but if you've watched this whole video up to this point, you've already done enough. Like I will get money for that, so that's good. But yeah, if you're feeling really generous, do please check out those things, because that's pretty much how this is feasible for me. So I think I'm done. That's it. Be good to yourself.